Hello, welcome to the British History Channel with me, Philippa Lacey Brewell, and I have a really special episode for you today. A few weeks ago, well, not that long ago actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was able to visit Hever Castle and their new permanent installation. They have reimagined the rooms as they were when Anne Boleyn, its most famous resident, lived there. And I was walked around by none other than Assistant Curator Kate McCaffrey, one of the brains behind this incredible project.
Yeah, so this is the first
Do you know what you
room.
mean? Well, one of the first things is the smell.
It's incredible, isn't it? From the rush matting. It's just an amazing kind of immersive sensory experience to add, because not only does it look great and it's authentic, but it smells really
Did you know
well.
it was going to?
We knew it would smell kind of herbal, but we didn't know exactly. And we didn't know how long it would last, because we get so many people walking through these rooms.
Yeah.
We didn't know if that would kind of affect or dampen down the smell, but it stayed really fresh. We have to water this twice a week, and we spray it with lavender kind of essential oil as well, which would have been used in the rushes when they spread them 500 years ago. So it's a similar kind of smell that we could emulate as possible.
And would they have weaved them like this? Because I'd never thought about it when you read about rushes on the floor.
It's funny, isn't it?
I actually had thought just like thrown on.
Strewn around, yeah, and that's what they used to do for a long time, but in the early Tudor period they started to realise they could weave them together, and it was much easier, because obviously if you think of ladies' dresses specifically, when you're walking through you'd be picking them up all over the shop. So I think it's much neater, especially for us practically, to have them woven, but they realised that as well. So
this first room,
so we're in the parlour, really recently renamed as the parlour. It was the morning room. And this was separated off from the Great Hall by Geoffrey Boleyn, and the staircase at the end that goes up to now the nursery was added by Thomas and Elizabeth Boleyn. So this is quite a Boleyn space. It was, you can see sort of different layers of their additions and changes as we go through. But yeah, it's kind of an introductory space, so we've kept it fairly bare of furniture, and it's mainly all about the flooring and the wall hangings and the exposition. We're kind of introducing who the Boleyns are in this space, but the wall hangings are so special in here. This painted cloth is my favourite.
Oh, is that what it is?
And so this was hand painted for us by the same team who painted our frieze up in the Great Chamber, and we've done a direct copy of the one in the background of Thomas Cromwell's portrait by Holbein, which is why that's there. And what's brilliant, we realised while doing research about this portrait, which obviously we've looked at a lot for the book last year, is that you can see the painted cloth coming away in the top corner, so it shows that it was a kind of painted cloth wallpaper as opposed to a fabric that was hung like these. So yeah, it's fun to show throughout the apartment all the different types of wall hangings that the Tudors played with, and painted cloth was by far the cheapest of all of them. It appears in inventories as stained or painted cloth, and it often would have just been kind of stamped with a pattern a bit like this one. So we kind of start off more simply in this room with the least expensive wall hangings, and as you progress through the rooms you progress with the Boleyns and their wealth and power, and you end in the best bedchamber surrounded by tapestry, which obviously was extraordinarily expensive, so the most expensive of all the hangings. I suppose
painted cloth is, or printed cloth is, quick as well.
Totally, it's quick, it's cheap, it's still effective, and was obviously used by really important people, as we can see in the background of Thomas Cromwell's portrait. So it's nice to show, the different options. And something that I think surprised me the most when I was researching for this project was like the amount of colour that Tudors had, or wealthy Tudors had, in their lives. Because I think in popular culture you always associate Tudor interiors with more sombre colours or kind of sludgy colours, and really
the dark wood,
exactly, or like a sludgy green or something. But really they were just, if you could afford it, you were surrounded by vibrancy. And we've based every single interior design choice is based in contemporary historical inventories. So there's a source for everything we've done, which was really important to us.
I love that you've got that blue cloth.
It's lovely,
in the
isn't
background
it?
of the from the background of the Cromwell portrait.
Cromwell. Hello, sorry. Hello, no, don't worry.
Shall we?
Yeah, we can
We're
move
about
on.
to get ambushed.
Yeah.
by some three.
So this is mainly an introductory space.
So it's, sorry, Geoffrey Boleyn.
Geoffrey Boleyn, yes. So
who
that's
is
Anne's great-grandfather. So he buys Hever in 1462, and he starts to kind of modernise the property, because obviously it was a medieval house that he bought. So he does things like put this wall in to separate off from the Great Hall, which is a nice kind of symbolic gesture to the moving away from like communal living with big open spaces to the more private, intimate living, which the Tudors loved. So again, making this space was like another room that you had to pass through to get to the family apartment upstairs. So it's just creating more smaller spaces.
interesting, with series of sort of intimacy.
Exactly, and like less servants as you went through kind of thing, which was important for everything that's happening obviously at Hever with all the, in the 1520s, all those conversations that were going on here about the future of England and Henry and Anne's relationship and the Reformation and everything. So yeah, the less servants the better, or the more private the better.
Yeah, the less earwigging.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's nice to show them moving away. Because the Great Hall obviously would have been originally out here, so it would have been a lot greater than it looks now, and it would have been open to the rafters as well. So it's a lot more small at this point.
You see that in some other houses actually, where they've sort of gone, oh, there's a lot of space we could use, and
Yes, yeah, exactly.
so we'll cut that in
Well,
half,
yeah,
or shorten that and make another
I
layer.
guess you couldn't extend outwards because of the moat, so you had to make the most of what you've got inside.
Well, at least he had some space to play with.
Yes, yeah. He could afford to partition off a few walls and la-di-da. The main installation happened within the space of like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Towards the
Oh,
end.
wow.
It's just like, bam, all the stuff went up on the walls, all the furniture came in.
What was it like for you, suddenly seeing it?
Oh, it was crazy because it's been in my head for 2 years. So to finally see it actually in person was surreal. It still is surreal. This project is largely everything that we can base in historical sources we are, but there's also a degree of imagination you have to use because we don't have an inventory of Hever during the Boleyn's time. We don't know for sure what these spaces looked like, so we have to kind of slightly use our imagination. But our main source base was about 10 inventories, contemporary inventories, but of families of comparable status to the Boleyns. So like there's a Dudley inventory, Guildford inventory from Leeds Castle, Thomas Cromwell's inventory, things like that. So we've used
people of similar standing, similar wealth.
exactly. We've used that for inspiration, and yeah, we've had so many debates over the last couple of years on how much money do we think the Boleyns had at this point, and all this sort of stuff.
It's
But
not a given that you know that.
no, we have a later recollection from Thomas Boleyn. He's writing to Cromwell and he's recollecting, it's in 1536 he's writing, but he's recollecting when he was just married that he had only £50 a year to live on, which wasn't very much. But then by the 1520s he's one of the wealthiest men in England, so it's nice to try and show that progression through the apartments.
Fantastic.
Do you want to head
Which
out?
you'll see, yeah, that's great.
Yes, this is the same old staircase.
So, because I remember for ages this staircase raised lots of questions.
It did, yes, because it's just an odd. It's like they've just pushed it in. Oh, we've got Cardinal Wolsey here in costume. Cardinal Wolsey himself. Hello, Peter, Your Eminence. Yes, so the staircase is just—it's like it's just been plonked there. Like they've cut through a lot of stone and like stone decoration in really odd ways. But I think it was probably just quite a hasty job by Thomas and Elizabeth to add another private entryway into the apartment here.
I think that was one of the things, wasn't it? It's not grand enough.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
They had to kind of elevate the spaces, particularly as they lived here. And what's brilliant is part of the research we've done is we've been able to now firmly place Thomas Boleyn here for, as you know, he chose to use Hever as his primary residence from 1505 until his death in 1539. So yeah, that's been really exciting because obviously the Boleyns had so many properties, Luton Hoo, Rochford Hall, like so a really vast property portfolio, and you'd think, why would he choose little old Hever to live in? But yeah, we have enough letters and archival documents to place him here really quite consistently when he's not at court or when he's not on the continent. So it kind of adds to the importance and centrality of Hever, knowing that this was where he chose to base himself. And we know that his mother, Margaret Butler, obviously Gareth's favourite, was here from 1519 until her death as well, just after Thomas, so a good 20 years.
And they looked after her here,
They looked after her, yeah,
because
because she had some kind of ailment or illness that meant that Thomas was sort of in charge of her estate and her well-being. And obviously Margaret Butler was the daughter and co-heiress of an earl, so she would have expected a certain level of grand interiors as well. So, but yes, this is what was Anne's bedroom and what's now, we've renamed as the nursery, because if it was Anne's bedroom, it's where Mary would have also slept. And
yeah, they wouldn't have been, they didn't have their own bedrooms.
Exactly. George would have done when he was old enough, because obviously he was the heir, but Anne and Mary would have shared a bed very similar to this. This is a canopied pallet bed, so not as grand as a four-poster, but still a nice way to be able to draw the curtains and have protection from the bugs on the tester. And George would have slept when they came to Hever in 1505 in a cradle like this. So this is a Tudor, it's a Jacobean cradle in Tudor style. And they would have slept here with governesses, nursemaids. As they got older, there would have been tutors, obviously, who were teaching them their lessons, probably in here as well. So it was a really kind of multifunctional living and sleeping space. And they would have had mattresses that would have been out on the floor for the staff to sleep on, that then they would have rolled away in the day to have more space. And we've ordered a pallet mattress so that we can have that out to display as well, the different types of Tudor sleeping. But yeah, I really like this room. I love the green and red. Again, that's the most common colour combination that you see in inventories, although it looked a bit Christmassy when we first put it up. Come December it's going to be extra perfect.
You're not going to have to do much.
Yeah, exactly. Stick a little bit of holly in here and we're good to go. And this is original furniture, so like this chest, for example, was original early 16th century oak furniture, and most of that, our furniture, we got from Paul Fitzsimmons from Warren Church. Yeah, so he's amazing. The kinds of things that he sources, so he was fabulous to work with.
Because was he ever left with any original furniture?
Not from the Boleyns' time, not that we know of anyway. We only have sort of Astor's records that survive, because we had a horrible flood in 1958 and 1968, and the archive was in the basement, as it always was, so everything was destroyed. But we have Astor's ledgers that remain, but beyond or before Astor we don't really know. So we can't say for certain that anything was here when the Boleyns lived here, and it's been through so many owners and tenants since then that it would be very hard to tell. But what's lovely is we've been able to put back in early 16th century furniture that the Boleyns would recognise, or that they would be very familiar with the style of. This is now as close to the original size of the room as we can get the space, so this is much more the kind of space that
it makes
would
so
recognise.
much more sense
It
now,
does, doesn't it?
This room particularly didn't
Kind of
make any sense.
No,
Yeah, it didn't work.
and everyone would always say it's so small for a bedroom, and we'd say, because it was bigger than this in the Boleyns' time, so it's nice to, it gives, from there to there, it gives a lot more space to display. Because if we put this full-size bed in that smaller room, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work at all. So
this
this is the great
room is
chamber.
incredible.
It's lovely, isn't it? I think this is the biggest transformation of all the rooms.
Yeah.
Because if you think this used to be the Books of Hours room, so there's basically nothing in here but the two cases with the Books of Hours in. It was kind of more like a museum-y space. And I think now it feels so lived in and so just like exactly how I imagine it would have been when the Boleyns would walk in.
See, I'd love to be able to say I've got enough imagination to work, to go into a space and imagine it. No, not really. Do it for me, and then I'll
Get
pretend
interior designer.
I've got there on my own.
I've become weirdly expert now in Tudor interior design. Something I did not expect to happen, but it's it's lovely to see
So
it come together.
the frieze around the top, is that painted on then, did you say?
It is, yes. So it's hand painted by the same people who painted the painted cloth in the parlour, so Tess Newell and her team. And they took about 2 weeks to paint it, maybe probably less than. But we went back and forth on the design a lot. So we chose the Tudor Rose, obviously, and the pomegranate from Catherine of Aragon, which some people have been a bit confused by. But
why did you go for that?
yeah, we chose it because, well, Catherine's a massive part in Anne's story, and in this room we're sort of entering the 1520s, early 1520s, and it would have been totally typical to have rooms displaying emblems or portraits, as we've got in here of Henry and Catherine as well, of the monarchs, to display your loyalty to them. And obviously Elizabeth Boleyn was a member of Catherine's household. Anne and Mary were long before anything happened with Anne and Henry, so the Boleyns had loyally served Henry and Catherine for many years before the kind of new relationship between the king and Anne began. So yeah, it was nice to include her in the story. And what I love is Ali pointed this out, actually, our curator. She said that she looks like she's got her arms crossed, the pomegranate. It looks like it's like a stubborn Catherine of Aragon pomegranate. It's just really fun and very on brand, I think. And then we've got the butler and Boleyn falcon, which obviously came from Margaret Butler but was adopted by Anne and Thomas as well.
Very beautiful depiction.
Yeah, they're gorgeous, thank you. And we took inspiration from the frieze from lots of contemporary surviving ones, mainly at Acton Court, which their frieze was created for Anne and Henry when they went to visit in 1535. And the colour scheme we've taken from the painted ceiling in the chapel at Ighton Moat, which is not far from us. And that had sorts of emblems for Catherine of Aragon specifically, but we've taken the colour palette from there, so it's kind of nice muted, but still bright. Because the idea for us is that it probably would have been up there since the time the Boleyns moved in around 1505. So by 1520, it's been up for a little while.
So we've gone to green and gold?
Yes, a kind of, golden and teal kind of combination, which again you see a lot in inventories, and this striping effect is just all over the place in inventories, and I think it's because, they called it paned fabric, and I think it was much more expensive to produce like a really long piece of one fabric than to just piece together scraps of different fabrics that they would call paned or striped.
Right.
So that's kind of where that came from, but it's quite a nice effect because it mirrors quite nicely our blue and gold ceiling.
Well, the ceiling is stunning. Was it just plain white?
It was just plain white, yeah. So we always had the ribbing on the ceiling, but it was all just plain white, and so you didn't really notice it. But we've taken this blue and gold ceiling from an exact contemporary description from 1528 of Sir Edward Wotton's ceiling, who was the officiator at Anne Boleyn's coronation. And he lived in a manor house just outside of Maidstone, and he describes his ceiling as a blue background with reddish gold ribs. So we thought, perfect, we'll take that and have that in here.
It's I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of stunning, but not, it's not garish. It's
Yes.
very elegant, actually.
I'm glad you think so. Yeah, as befitted the Boleyns. It's sort of made the room look bigger as well. That's what lots of people have remarked on, weirdly, because we've sort of got more furniture in here than we had before. But I think it's just
because it's a continuous space.
Exactly, rather than broken up with different items. So a lot of this furniture is original 16th century as well. So this gorgeous oak chest is from 1530. The beautiful chairs are from 1530 as well.
Oh wow!
And they still close up. The X chairs, they still sort of fold up so they could be portable.
It's like a very posh camping chair.
If you think they've sort of are transporting furniture around from house to house, it makes sense. But yeah, they've been reupholstered since then though. That's not original reupholstery. And original chests in the background, and yes, it's a room filled with interesting objects. These are original 16th century ceramics we've got, so that the flowers are in.
Oh.
This one's from Italy.
He looks really good.
Do you think so?
He's
giving a side eye, isn't he? Yeah. He's really giving you a look, Peter. No. And our wonderful florist Pam, who decorates the entire castle, has now had it put upon her to create Tudor appropriate flower arrangements for us, so they're all traditional flowers that you'd find in a Tudor garden, which
So they're
is
going to be
wonderful.
incredibly, like, very seasonal. I
Very
suppose, isn't it?
seasonal,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, she does a brilliant job.
Not going to get any tulips from.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, no dazzling daffodils. I don't think so. That will
Not in
change.
July.
Yeah, exactly. So our lovely lute. This does actually work, and it's a proper lute. I can't play, of course, but we're hoping to find someone who might be able to. Do you play?
No, no. Do I lute?
You have a
No,
little strum.
but I know a man who does.
Yeah. So we basically took inspiration for the designs from the Thomas More family portrait and the ambassadors, Holbein's ambassadors, which is basically how we furnished the buffet and the rooms. So kind of everything, every object or accessory you see in the background of those paintings we have in some format in this space. So I've never looked at so many portraits just to look at what's happening in the background, rather than who's in the front.
Yes, that's quite insightful.
It's quite
interesting,
fun.
insightful.
It was, again, a different way to look at things.
What about the plate then with the?
So we had this made by a coppersmith who only fashions things with Tudor tools and materials. He's amazing. He's called the Copper Elf. And he hand hammered the Boleyn crest into the plate because it's the exact kind of thing that they would have had displayed in a room like this in the Great Chamber to show off their coats of arms and their wealth. But it's beautiful. It's really been the whole plate's been hand hammered. And that's more original 16th century ceramics with the lavender in. Again, they came from Paul, so he's been massively helpful.
He was number one customer.
Yes, and the chair is from Paul as well. That's also original 16th century. It makes me think of the one in one of Henry's psalm books. There's a portrait of him sitting in a chair exactly like that. So I love that chair. So it makes me think of that.
It's really interesting. It's like for leaning, maybe it's not backwards.
Yes,
like,
not really backwards. Yeah,
any which way but backwards.
The X chairs were a really popular form of chair to sit in, which again you wouldn't think is massively comfortable. These at least have backs on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more like it's made of iron, so it's a curule stool is what it's called. But you don't want to lean back in that. Thankfully, there's a cushion on it because it wouldn't be very comfortable.
Well, there's a pine cone on it now as well.
Yes.
So it's not.
We're trying to do what the National Trust do with like putting things to
Well,
discourage seating.
They're meaner than you. They use like thistles.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. We thought they used pine
They use
cones.
thistles, yeah.
I'm not sure the pine cone's been working.
Dare you?
Yeah. So maybe we'll have to do that because I don't think the pine cones have been working because they keep going missing. I think people are just picking them up. So maybe we'll have to switch to a thistle.
What did you get from Hever?
Yeah, a pine cone. Yeah, a Tudor pine cone. But that's part of the fun now is seeing, obviously we've been planning this for so long, but now seeing how the visitors work with this space is going to be...
Seeing how long the matting lasts.
So, exactly, things like that. We're going to have this regularly kind of replaced and updated. Probably every January when we close we'll have to have parts redone.
See if you have trouble with bugs like they used to.
Yes, well that's the idea of spraying with the lavender is antibacterial, so the idea is that will help keep this clean. But we've already found moths in the fabric. We're like,
no, get out.
But then that might give it a more authentic feel as well if there's some moth holes. But yes, lovely. I love this bust as well. It's one of my favourite pieces that we've got.
Yes, where's that come from?
So it's Italian, early 16th century terracotta. It's entirely made out of terracotta. We again bought it from Paul, but we didn't know who she was when we purchased it. But Owen and I have recently been researching and figured out who she is. And she's Claude of France. Claude of France's daughter, Charlotte.
French, you can see
the fleur de lis. Yeah. So she died when she was 7, but Anne would have known her. So she was at the French court when Anne was there. So it's a sort of lovely coincidence that we have a beautiful bust of someone that Anne Boleyn set eyes upon and knew from France.
That's quite poignant, actually.
It is, isn't it? And it's lovely to show the French fashions, I think, as well, the French hood and everything. Her eyes are quite piercing.
They are.
Like they follow you around a little bit.
Yes.
Everything we had to think of accessory-wise, these books were made by a company called Bookworks, and so it's all parchment, original parchment, and we had them bound and with clasps as they would have done 500 years ago. I've got my eye on a couple.
Yeah.
There's some lovely ones. And then this is the final room in the apartment. This is the best bed chamber.
Oh this is transformed as well.
Isn't it? I always thought the Great Chamber was going to be my favourite, but I think this is now my favourite room. I think what struck me immediately, or the biggest change for me when we were installing, was the lighting. So we deliberately went for a really orange toned light in here, so it feels so warm and cosy, and like it would have been lit by candles, and you know, the fire, and so yeah, this is a very, and again I feel like it has almost feels a bit bigger now that we've redone it.
I think there's something about having the flooring down that
it
makes
really,
that happen.
It really changes, doesn't it? And it also muffles like the footstep sound that we used to get a lot, so it changes the whole.
That's interesting as well, isn't it? Thinking about the lower floors.
Exactly. It sort of adds another sensory aspect that we weren't expecting so much.
So now we've got tapestries.
Now we've got tapestries, yes. So we wanted to save tapestries, which were extraordinarily expensive for the last room, because this room is set when Anne is sort of queen in waiting. She accepts Henry's proposal in the narrative we're telling, and she returns here. And when she was obviously a child, she would have been in the nursery, but when she returned as the queen-to-be, she would have had the best bedchamber, so she would have stayed here. And this is where she would have read and received all of Henry's love letters that were sent to her here at Hever. Yeah, love letters, rather scandalous love letters. And probably wrote her replies as well that we don't have anymore, which is so tantalising. But this is the most private space in the apartment, because you've had to walk through the most rooms to get here. So it's absolutely the space where she would have been having those very private moments of reading and replying to Henry. And I just think all the conversations that were had in this room and in these walls. This is also where she recovered from the sweating sickness in 1528, when Henry sent his second best doctor, Dr. Butts, to attend her here. So a lot of important things happened in this space. It's
absolutely wonderful how your work is enabling you to literally place people, obviously especially Anne, in an actual space.
Totally.
And what she's probably doing in it.
I think it's the closest you can come to sort of imagining what she was thinking and feeling when you're standing in the space that she was standing in when she was making those decisions.
I imagine she felt quite safe here.
I think so.
I mean, it's got that feel anyway, it always has had, but...
Yeah. I think it's the appeal of Hever was always that it was smaller, so it was intimate and it was private, and it was a retreat, I think, for Thomas, but also increasingly for Anne. And she would only come here with her most trusted servants, her most trusted retinue, because you couldn't house a big old retinue.
Big, yeah.
Exactly. So
I think huge entourage.
No, I think it really played into her hands with the kinds of events that were happening at that time, the privacy you'd want from that. So.
Because people think that this is close to London, because if you just looked at it on Google Maps, it kind of looks it. But I mean, we're here every year and we take people into London, and it's a good hour on a coach now. So on made roads.
Yeah. So they say it was a day's ride from Greenwich, where Thomas was based a lot. But then obviously it's also sort of equidistant to the coast, where Thomas was going on all his diplomatic missions.
So it's well placed.
So it was really well placed for him and his young family. And then for Anne, it was sort of the best place for her to retreat to, not far from London. A day's ride, though. I mean, it sounds like a long time, doesn't it?
Well, but it's not sort
relatively.
You can't pop over like you
can't just hire a cab.
Don't put yourself on the river.
Exactly.
If you want to be away from him.
Yes, totally. So I think it has that intimacy still in the space, which I think is really important. And we've got some fake fire in the corner.
I like the fire with the noise.
Nice, yeah. And it's amazing, actually. It uses water vapour and it produces it looks like flames, but obviously it's not. We've had a few concerned visitors say, you have a fire. It's like, don't worry, it's just water vapour. It would be a massive fire hazard with this rush matting if we had an actual fire.
It makes you think, though. Of course, that was what they had,
Totally.
And you've got the sketch of Anne.
Yes, we have. Sketch. Yes, because sort of the more research that goes into this sketch, the more people, it's still controversial, obviously, I think are sort of suggesting that yes, this is definitely Anne, and that it is a kind of, she's obviously in a state of undress. And perhaps it was,
which is hilarious because it's high neck and
it's true. It's not undressed. Yeah, not undressed as we'd know it, but she's not in formal. She's obviously not been dressed yet in her gown. She's in a sort of dressing gown essentially, and a nightcap. So it's how she kind of would have been in this space.
Yeah, that's true.
In her night clothes. So yeah, it's nice to have it in this room. And we've got even the curtains. This is the level of detail I've gone to in these inventories and pictures, but these curtains are an exact replica, including the pole and the specific fastening to the wall that you see in the background of Holbein's portrait of Henry Guildford, where you just see a corner of a curtain.
Thank you to the painters for being so pedantic.
Honestly, thank you, because it's been massively helpful. Yeah, we have a lot to thank Holbein
coming
for.
off the wall,
Exactly,
behind Cromwell.
the fastening of the curtain pole, everything has been sort of done as exactly as possible, which is, yeah, it's quite funny. And these tapestries are both replicas of, or recreations of two in the V&A, the one behind the bed and the one there. And they're part of the Devonshire hunting series from the 1450s, I think, off the top of my head. And they're French based, so the exact kind of thing that the Boleyns would have had and probably inherited, because obviously tapestry was so expensive, you often, if you were lucky, had it passed down to you. And then this one is the kind of tapestry that they would have had made for them, and this is from the Field of Cloth of Gold.
Well, can I spot? Is
Yeah.
that Francis?
Yes, that is exactly.
It's not the nicest.
It's not the most flattering. His nose, yeah, it's a very
They
big
went for the
nose.
French nose.
He did go for the French nose. So yeah, it's nice to have. Obviously, Thomas Boleyn organised the Field of Cloth of Gold. It's almost certain all the Boleyns were in attendance. So it's nice to have this tapestry. It's called the Wrestlers.
It's a bit of a love story going on down
Yeah,
here.
I think so. Yeah, there's all sorts of interesting things in this tapestry. Actually, I notice something new every time I look at it. But we've been trying to research into who the Black Trumpeter is.
Yeah.
But because we thought, oh, is it John Blank, who's obviously the famous
He got around a bit if he was everywhere.
Well, exactly. But then, of course, he's absolutely not, because he's got the French fleur-de-lis on his trumpet. So he's a French trumpeter.
Well, that makes sense anyway.
Trumpeter. So yes, but nothing's known about him as far as I'm aware. This one is full size. You can tell that it's not been altered as well, because it's got the borders still around the edge, whereas often tapestries are sort of half cut off or something, because people have chopped them up.
Fit them somewhere, which is
crazy, isn't it?
yeah. Fold it.
Just
fold it and tack it if you need to.
I know.
Just stop cutting things up.
Dreadful. Actually, we had, because our one original tapestry, and here is the one above the fireplace, and that used to be in a big case in the Book of Hours room, but it's an armorial arras from the early 16th century, and it fit perfectly above the fireplace, thankfully. We were like looking for somewhere we could slot it in.
Because that the Welsh dragon?
Yes, the Welsh dragon, yes, it's the royal coat of arms with sort of Welsh nod, which is nice. And you can see it's faded quite a lot from sun exposure, but that's also why it's nice to put it there, because it's away from all the windows.
Yeah, left alone.
Exactly, give it some love that it deserves. And we've tried to nod with lots of French influences. So this is a chest from France in the late 15th century, to nod to how Francophile the Boleyns were, really.
Yes, yeah.
Which was a massive part of their identity. But yeah, the bed looks so comfy, I just want to like jump on it and have a nap. But I think it would collapse if I did. It's not very...
No one is allowed to jump on
No.
the bed, even Kate.
Even me. Yeah, this is our oldest bed in the collection. This is from 1485, and it's also French. We had this bed anyway, but we've had it rehung.
Guys, we're coming in here first.
Yeah, we've had it
It's really
rehung.
nice as well to see something you've had in the collection.
Totally.
come to life.
And yeah, it looks completely different now, and it's got a whole new life. And we do have recreations of some of the love letters as well that were sent here, which our castle duty manager, John, actually he's very handy on Photoshop, so he's created these for us and printed them on actual parchment. But yeah, there's so many that we know were sent to Hever. It's lovely to kind of have a way to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I just
Yes,
the one
he was verbose.
He really was. It's the AB in the heart for me. I mean, that's just so lovesick schoolboy, isn't it?
Yeah. Watch out, girls.
Yes, the irony knowing what happens later on in
Exactly.
their relationship is awful.
Might have been a little bit too intense at the beginning.
Then fast and hard.
Yeah.
Breathing new life into the spaces has been one of the big aims of the project.
And to know it's going to be here.
Yeah.
And you can adapt it and
We can
develop
tinker with it and change the stories we're telling and the items on display, but yeah, the foundations are here to stay, which is the biggest permanent change the castle's had in well over a generation. So it's really lovely to be able to be the people bringing that to the spaces and to the public as well.
yeah, you've changed it from a museum into like a living history.
Lived in space. Yeah, I'm glad you think so.
Well
Glad
done,
you like
that's
it.
awesome.
Good.
Well done.
Thank
because
you.
it's incredible.
Thank you so much.